Hi everyone, this is Mr. Kiefler, and today we're talking about performing heightened text and phrasing. So before we talk about what phrasing is, just a note of how we are, or what we're working on and focusing on. In the advanced acting curriculum, we're going to figure out how to communicate using vocabulary and terms unique to theater. In fact, some of these will be unique to theater, but many of them will also overlap with your English classes. We're also going to utilize rehearsal experiences to improve stage performances. Again, a reminder that doing your text work is part of rehearsal. Whether it happens in the rehearsal hall or not, it may just happen at home or at school, but that's really important to improve your stage performance, especially your comprehension of what you're saying when it comes to heightened text. And then finally, we're going to explain and apply the use of an actor's book in relation to the complexity of a role. So, the more you understand a role, the more you understand the nuances, the more nuanced and complex your role can become. And then finally, real-world connections. We're going to understand and appreciate poetic language or heightened text. Analyze text, so you're going to be better at understanding difficult text, not just heightened text, but any text, especially academic text. And then finally, clarity in the written word. Not only will you be able to read better, but you will be able to write better. Okay, so we're going to look at Eminem's Lose Yourself for the first part of this. We're going to skip over the first part of his song, though, and get to his palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy, there's vomit on his sweater already. Well, before we even get into this, what is a phrase? We're talking about phrasing. Well, a phrase can be smaller, but also can be a single sentence. So for Eminem, this is a line of text, this whole chunk here, and this is a line of text. And we're going to see that in Shakespearean text and other poetic texts. We get to lines versus sentences versus phrasing. So, for example, I'm just going to quickly take you down here. This is a line of text, and this is a line of text, but those are actually one sentence. And it has many phrases in it. It actually has, to my understanding, which we're not going to focus on, is 1, 2, 3, 4 phrases. So, one sentence, 2 lines, and 4 phrases. For our purposes, we're just focusing on the first 2 lines here. His palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. There's vomit on his sweater already. And before we actually start to do our phrasing, we're going to break it up into sort of identifying where our phrases are. So like archaeologists, we're going to mine this text for information. And just like archaeologists, we're going to break the area that we're digging into to find fossils or remnants of ancient cultures. We're going to break it into little spots so we can really focus on that area. So the first thing I like to do when I'm trying to identify my phrases is find verbs. His palms are sweaty. Now, if you look at that and you try to figure out which one is a verb, none of them really stand out immediately, but there is the ultimate verb, the state of being, which is actually a really important hint for what a phrase is. So a phrase, like I said, you want to look for verbs first, because every phrase will contain a verb. It's the easiest thing to find. It's the action word, a subject, and an object. Now, I know sometimes subject and object can be a little confusing. Like when you say something is subjective, that means it's an opinion, versus objective means it's a fixed reality or just true regardless. It's unbiased. When you talk about a subject, like you're taking math as a subject because that's a variable subject in your course load. Like you have math and physics and drama, right? But I make this a little bit easier. I'm going to call these the big idea. It's a little acronym that I have for what these mean. The subject is the thing that is being. So if we go back up to Eminem, are is a state of being. Something is being something else. A verb is an interaction. It's an interaction. So the being interacts with the goal. The goal. Oh, I'm going to rewrite that. That was poor writing on my part, my friends. So the being has a goal, and the being is going to interact with the goal. So if we go back up to here, we found our verb. And what is being? His palms are. Palms are, and what are they being? Sweaty. Now, as you'll see, I have my own special way of denoting this. So I'll come back to more of a neutral color here. For my subject, I like to circle it. My verb, I draw an arrow underneath because it's the thing that's doing something. And the object, I think of a box, so I draw a box. One more time and maybe a better color here. Box for the object, arrow for this verb, and circle for the subject or the being. So let's come back up here. Well, we've got palms are sweaty. Let's look for more verbs. Knees weak. Well, weak is a state of being, not a verb. So we know that it's a state of being, which means that it probably means that something is being that. So then what is being weak? Well, his knees are weak. And same thing with arms. Heavy is a state of being. And so arms. So immediately there's sort of some hints inside of this text for us. I've done this in a weird order. But anyway, his knees are weak and his arms are heavy. So we're going to underline arms are heavy. So the colors mean nothing here, friends. It's all about how I've written it with the circles, the underlines, and the boxes. Now let's go to this next one. Vomit on his sweater already. So there's vomit on his sweater. Let's look for, so vomit is an action word, and on is an action word, and then that's it. What is being vomited? Well, I guess nothing is, which means that it's actually not it's not actually an action. And what's on? Vomit is on. Oh, well, there you go. So now we have our hint. Vomit on what? A sweater. There's vomit on sweater. Now, you could include his in that, but I don't like to because I like to keep my phrasing as simple as possible. And the reason for that is then we turn it into this sort of caveman speak, which takes it down to the nuts and bolts, the really simple, what's the big idea? Like, what are you really just trying to say? Palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy, vomit on sweater. And then we go to the last part of the phrase, which is what's on his sweater? Well, mom's spaghetti. So just like where we're missing a verb over here, we're missing a verb and an object here. So this is almost a compound phrase where they've taken vomit on his sweater and they've zoomed in, and what do you see it is? It's spaghetti. And the qualifier, the thing that it is really is mom's spaghetti. So now we have a simple understanding of that. Here, we're going to look at Shakespearean text. And we're just going to, again, do the first two lines. So, setting up my roadblocks every time I see a piece of punctuation. And now I'm going to go after the verbs. So, jests, scars, felt, soft, through, and breaks. Okay, so what is jesting? He is. Well, some context here. This is just after Romeo has met Juliet. They've escaped the party that they were at because they're actually enemies of the family that hosts the party. Romeo's looking for Juliet, and his friends are off in the background teasing him about a girl he used to like, but Romeo's fallen in love with Juliet now. So he jests at what? At scars. Oh, so he's jesting at scars, which means that scars is actually an object in this case. So that's interesting. Let's see what happens with scars. And then and nothing is actually scarring, so we know that scars, because there's nothing that's being scarred. In fact, he is jesting at scars. So that's no longer a verb. And then what is feeling a wound? What's feeling a wound? He jests at scars that never felt. Oh, so actually scars are never feeling a wound, so we need to extend this. That's important. And all of a sudden, look at this. Scars becomes both a subject and an object. Scars never felt a wound. So this is what happens when you get to a compound phrase. As you'll note, we had two verbs inside of one sentence. That means this is a compound phrase. And when you have scars, or a word, I should say, that has both a subject and an object, you're actually going to find out what the main phrase is first. And I'm going to tell you what the main phrase is. The main phrase is scars never felt a wound. Because that's... he's joking at these scars. He's joking at scars that never felt a wound. So he's joking at something that isn't even real, which means that actually what happens in a compound phrase is this whole phrase becomes the object of the first phrase, of the secondary phrase, rather. He's jesting not just at scars, he's jesting at scars that never felt a wound. So that's an important distinction. Now, if you look over here at the next sentence, but soft, but is not a subject, object, or verb. But when you have a single word in a single phrase, Shakespeare is actually asking you, and many poets are asking you to treat it with the same emphasis of all three. It's an important word. And the same thing applies for soft. But soft is a verb. It means be quiet or shut up or move softly. And it has an exclamation mark. And because it's a verb, it's actually going to be performed even louder. So you would go, he jests at scars that never felt a wound, but really small, but emphasized. Soft, even more so. What light through yonder window breaks? So we have through. Well, through is a state of being. You're moving through something, right? And it's actually not even a state of being. It's more of a transitional word. It's a qualifier. How are you moving? Moving through. So I'm actually going to take that away. So through is not, and it's just breaks. So what is breaking? Well, a window is breaking, but a window is not breaking something. It's being broken, which means that the window is our object. And what's breaking the window? Light. Light is breaking through. Again, that state of being. Light is breaking through the window. So here's a weird instance where it's not being interacts with goal, but being goal interacts with. So the reason we do caveman speech is if you rearrange it as being interacts with goal, it still makes sense. Light breaks window. That makes sense. And now we have our first two phrases, our first two sentences with the phrases. And you'll note that inside two lines, I should say, inside two lines are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 phrases, and 1, 2, 3, 4 sentences. So again, we start to see how complex and why phrasing really helps us start to take this stuff apart. So now to your task. We've had the examples of Lose Yourself, Romeo and Juliet. Using a Shakespeare sonnet, you're going to phrase this text into its big ideas. Note the subject, object, and verb. Again, a reminder, each simple phrase contains no more than one of each subject, object, and verb. And in a compound phrase, you have to find the main idea first by circling a single word with the subject and object. And if you're struggling to find the first phrase, please notice all the verb or interaction words first. They're going to help you figure out what's interacting with what. And finally, if you lose the idea of subject, object, and verb, you need to figure out that the being is interacting with their goal. And with that, I leave you to your task and have a great